There is a power in restraint that modern man no longer understands. In a world drunk on indulgence, where every whim is catered to instantly and every urge is validated in the name of freedom, the idea of abstaining, of deliberately choosing denial, is treated like madness. But the ancients knew, and the strong still know. The man who can say no, who can walk away from pleasure and still burn with purpose, is the one who shapes history. Corneliu Codreanu was such a man. His name may stir controversy in political circles, but that is not our focus here. We look beyond politics, into the fire of his soul, into the code he lived by. Codreanu believed that a man's strength was forged in silence, in self-control, in discipline sharpened by spiritual devotion. To him, abstinence was not repression, it was refinement. It was the sacred preparation of the warrior before the war, the fast before the battle, the consecration of a body that would not serve lust, but legacy. Codreanu did not indulge because he did not belong to himself. He belonged to a mission. Every moment wasted in carnal pleasure was a moment stolen from his calling. He saw weakness in men who worshipped women, who chased after comfort, who spent their youth intoxicated by vice. To him, indulgence wasn't just personal failure, it was betrayal of destiny. He led the Iron Guard not as a mere political movement, but as a spiritual brotherhood. His men were expected to live like modern monks, purified in thought, body, and will. There were no compromises. In a letter to his followers, he warned that those who cannot control their lower appetites will never lead, never command respect, and never withstand the temptations that come with power. For Codreanu, strength wasn't measured by muscle or money. It was measured by how much of the world you could reject and still stay rooted in your mission. Imagine a soldier walking into battle, sword in hand, but he's tired, distracted, hollow. Why? Because he spent the night drinking, chasing women, filling himself with pleasure. His body is strong, but his will is scattered. His focus is broken. Now imagine a different soldier, one who fasted before the fight, who meditated, who cleansed his thoughts of desire and entered the war with a clear mind and a cold heart. That is Codreanu's masculine ideal. Not the playboy, not the pleasure seeker, but the ascetic warrior, disciplined, devout, and dangerous. In many ways, he revived the archetype of the Christian knight. His ideal man wasn't free in the modern sense. He was chained, but by choice, bound to a higher purpose, bound by duty, by sacrifice, by faith. He didn't trust freedom that served the flesh. He trusted only the freedom that came from mastery over the self. This ideal echoes through history. Marcus Aurelius abstained not because he was weak, but because indulgence diluted his reason. Siddhartha left behind wealth and women, not because they were evil, but because they were insufficient for truth. Early Christian ascetics lived in deserts, burning away desire so that they could hear God without distraction. Even warriors like the samurai practiced seppuku, ritual suicide, not just to die honorably, but to affirm that their flesh did not own them. Codreanu tapped into this lineage, and modern men have forgotten it. We are taught to chase, to consume, to take pride in how many women we've conquered or how many pleasures we've sampled. But true strength doesn't conquer women. It conquers the urge to be conquered by them. Abstinence is not cowardice. It is war. It is standing before your flesh and declaring, "You do not rule me." This is the fire Codreanu lived by. A fire that burned in quiet hours of fasting, in long walks with no indulgence, in speeches that cut through the air like steel, in the tears of men who broke under the weight of their lust but were reborn through sacrifice. Abstinence was the crucible. It wasn't about becoming less of a man. It was about becoming more. It was about taking all the scattered fragments of desire and forging them into one unshakable focus. Codreanu believed that every man has a divine potential, but few ever reach it because they pour their energy into fleeting pleasures instead of eternal purpose. And so he built an order, a code, a movement, one that demanded abstinence not out of shame, but out of sacred necessity. Because the man who has not mastered his urges will eventually be mastered by the world. Death of Desire, the Stoics' path to cold clarity. This is not a guide. This is not self-help. This is war. Kill the need. Master the mind. Corneliu Codreanu did not see lust as a private vice. He saw it as a public disease, a slow poison injected into the bloodstream of civilization to rot men from the inside out. To him, lust wasn't just about sex. It was a larger metaphor for spiritual decay, a symptom of a man turned inward on himself, unmoored from discipline, from God, and from mission. In Codreanu's eyes, lust was not merely immoral, it was strategic, a system designed to weaken men, disarm them mentally, and keep them addicted to the very chains that enslave them. He warned that the modern world had become skilled at this warfare, enticing men with comfort, with luxury, with constant sexual stimulation, not to empower them, but to neuter them. The man with a drained will is easy to govern. He does not build, he does not lead. He consumes, he obeys, and he rationalizes his own mediocrity. This is the warfare of the modern age, not bullets and bombs, but screens and seductions. Codreanu recognized that a man who cannot resist pleasure cannot resist tyranny. He believed modernity created men too exhausted to revolt, not from work, but from overstimulation, from women weaponized by media, from pornography replacing purpose, from men trading their testosterone for dopamine, scrolling endlessly while their ancestral instincts rust. This, Codreanu would argue, is no accident. The more addicted men become to sex and sensuality, the less capable they are of long-term thinking. The state prefers men who are docile, passive, and disoriented. Men who have no energy left for revolt because they've wasted it on lust. The real battlefield, Codreanu believed, was internal. Whoever controlled a man's urges controlled his future. He was not alone in this warning. Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, foresaw a society not enslaved by pain, but by pleasure. A world where citizens were flooded with sensual gratification until they lost the ability to question or resist. Julius Evola, too, condemned the degeneration of modern man into a sensual beast, disconnected from transcendence. Both thinkers echoed what Codreanu lived, that lust is more than temptation, it is sedative. A man consumed by desire is never at peace. He is always chasing, always distracted, always under the illusion that fulfillment lies in the next thrill. He cannot be trusted with power because he has not even mastered himself. Lust makes a man predictable. Predictable men are easy to market to, easy to manipulate, and easy to forget. Codreanu's antidote was rebellion, not just political rebellion, but spiritual insurrection. His abstinence was an act of war, against the state, against the flesh, against the spiritual entropy of modern life. His followers understood that saying no to the body was the first step in saying yes to destiny. He created a militant brotherhood, not of libertines, but of ascetics, men who saw the rejection of lust not as weakness, but as sacred armor. Their discipline was their defense. While the world outside worshipped indulgence, they starved it. While the masses bowed to sensuality, they trained themselves to rise above it. To Codreanu, every man's greatest enemy was not found in the government or the battlefield. It was found in the mirror, during moments of weakness, when the urge to feel good tried to override the mission to do good. The world does not fear the angry man. The angry man is loud but impulsive. The system can manage his outbursts, distract him with new pleasures, exhaust him with fake outrage. But the man who controls his lust, who fasts when others feast, who abstains when others indulge, that man is a threat. That man cannot be seduced, sold to, or spiritually enslaved. He operates on a higher voltage. He lives for something beyond the flesh. Codreanu's message to men was clear. You must become spiritually untouchable. You must walk through the temptations of this world like a ghost, unmoved, unfazed, unbreakable. Only then can you build anything worth defending. Only then can you lead without compromise. Because the man who has conquered his lust becomes immune to every form of control that seeks to own him. In the alchemy of lust, you'll be taken deep into the ancient and forgotten discipline of sexual transmutation, a principle once reserved for monks, warriors, kings, and creators. There comes a point in a man's journey when he must choose comfort or calling. One path is paved with pleasure, applause, and temporary highs, but leads nowhere. The other is steep, lonely, and laced with sacrifice, but it forges legacy. Codreanu believed that abstinence was not about deprivation. It was about direction. It was about taking the raw material of masculine desire and refining it into flame. To him, lust was not simply a sin. It was a misused force, a powerful energy, sacred and divine in its highest form, but dangerous when left ungoverned. And so the solution was never to kill desire, but to transmute it, to take what was base and elevate it into purpose. This is the hidden meaning behind strong men who abstain. They do not turn away from pleasure because they fear it. They turn away because they have something greater to build. They know that indulging now will cost them forever, and the mission is too important to risk. We see this truth play out again and again, not in theory, but in tragedy. Consider the fallen giants of our modern era, men who rose to greatness only to be brought down by lust. Tiger Woods had the world in his hands, riches, legacy, respect, but he lost control of his desires, and the empire collapsed. James Franco, once beloved in Hollywood, was stripped of opportunity and honor because he couldn't master his impulses. These are not just scandals. They are modern parables. Each one whispers the same warning. Lust converts legacy into ashes. A man can build for decades and lose everything in a moment of indulgence. That is the cost of weakness. And Codreanu understood this long before the world watched it unfold on screens. He knew that a man's downfall begins the moment he believes his urges are harmless. That's why he called for vigilance, not because he was obsessed with control, but because he had seen what happens when men let go of the reins. But this message is not one of fear, it is one of fire. When a man begins to abstain, when he begins to say no to pleasure and yes to purpose, something awakens in him. He starts to reclaim the energy that was leaking through temptation. His mind sharpens, his vision expands, his voice carries weight. This is not theoretical, it's biological. Sexual transmutation, the redirection of erotic energy into ambition, creativity, and leadership, has been practiced by warriors, monks, and inventors for centuries. Napoleon Bonaparte abstained during campaigns to stay sharp. Nikola Tesla remained celibate to protect his genius. Muhammad Ali would avoid sex before fights to preserve his aggression and focus. They understood what Codreanu lived. Abstinence is a multiplier. It doesn't just remove weakness, it creates strength. Carl Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole by mastering the unconscious drives that rule most men. For Jung, to become truly powerful, a man must integrate his shadow. That means confronting lust not as a shameful secret, but as a wild force that must be tamed. Codreanu's life was a case study in this integration. He didn't pretend temptation didn't exist. He simply refused to let it dictate his destiny. He took the chaos within and forged it into discipline, into clarity, into unwavering commitment to a higher order. That is the masculine ideal, not perfection, but self-mastery. So what is the path forward for the modern man? It begins with silence, with turning off the noise and sitting with your impulses, not obeying them, but observing them. It continues with vision, replacing lustful fantasies with a picture of the man you are becoming. Then comes the fast, from porn, casual sex, empty indulgence, and weak company. You begin to protect your seed like it holds your future, because it does. You stop chasing women and start building a life so magnetic that they chase you. You wake up early. You move with purpose. You speak with less words but more weight. Your eyes are not scattered. They're locked on the target. You become, as Codreanu envisioned, a man on fire. Not with lust, but with mission. Because in the end, the man who abstains is not running from the world. He's preparing to reshape it. He is not less of a man for turning away from pleasure. He is more of one because he sees beyond it. Codreanu's legacy reminds us that the strongest men are not those who can take whatever they want. They are the ones who could, but choose not to, because they are guided by something higher, something sacred, and that is the eternal truth. The man who governs himself becomes immune to governance. The world bends not to the man who chases pleasure, but to the one who abstains for purpose. Thus remember, we are interceptor. Becoming interceptor is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war. Welcome to the Interceptor Archive, where the undeceived rise. No ads, no distractions, just pure, uninterrupted power. As a crusader of the archive, you gain infinite access to every video, every truth, every strategy, without censorship, delay, or interruption. New drops daily, delivered to you before the world sees them. Raw, unfiltered, elite. Interceptions.com